Typhoon Tino further weakens as it decelerates over the Iloilo Strait. However, Tino is expected to remain at typhoon category.
Lumakas pa bilang typhoon ang bagyong Emong. Namataan ng pag-asa ang mata ng bagyo, 220 kilometers kanluran ng Dagupan City.
50 pamilya ang nilikas sa barangay Dagueray sa bayan ng Sanchez Mira sa Cagayan kaninang madaling araw dahil sa pagbaha. Ayon sa lokal na pamahalaan, nagkaroon ng flash flood bunsod ng naranasan pa ring pag-ulan sa lugar.
Now, there's a growing crisis across Europe and the Mediterranean. New data shows more than half of the region's land was hit by a drought last month.
Extreme heat is baking Southern California as a dangerous heat wave pushes temperatures well into triple digits for much of the region through Saturday.
Unexpected. That is how NASA is describing the sea level rise measured in 2024.
We witness the effects of climate change that is affecting the world today. In fact, many of us are experiencing strong typhoons, heavy rains, droughts, and the changes of patterns of the climate that is being observed in our area. But what is really climate change? What is the idea of the youth about this issue?
Welcome to this special report about the climate change. The objectives of this video presentation are to produce a scientific and technical material about climate change for high school and college students, explain climate change in a simple manner that is easy to understand, increase the percentage of the young people with proper knowledge about climate change, disseminate information to viewers about the causes and effects of climate change and the steps in reducing the effects of climate change, encourage the youth and the viewers to make a lifestyle change to contribute in mitigating the climate change.
According to the studies of UNICEF, in 2023, 85% of young people aged 15 to 24 in 55 countries heard about climate change, but only 50% know about the correct definition of climate change based on United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change.
Random interviews with college students.
Climate change has been global issues worldwide. It causes temperature change for various local and national. One of the major contributor to the process of biodiversity loss in our Earth.
Pabago-bago po ng panahon, like now, mainit, tapos po kanina super makulimlim yung panahon.
Pagbabago ng klima sa ating mundo.
Ang climate change po for me, pag kunyari po tatapon tayo kung saan lang ng basura, pwede pong bumaha or pwede pong bumarak kunyari sa ilog. Tatapon po tayo ng basura. Kawawa naman po yung mga nasa tubig, like yung mga fish, pwede pong mamatay.
Ang idea alam ko sa climate change is pabago-bagong panahon, tulad ng tag-init, tas biglang uulan. O kaya malimlim. Pagkalas ng limlim, biglang iinit na napakalakas na init.
Ang idea ko lang po sa climate change, itong pagbago-bago po ang panahon natin, hindi po natin alam kung may parating ba talagang bagyo. Then po, minsan po nalindol po sa atin.
For me po, yung climate change, ito po yung pagbabago ng panahon, which is may tag-init or may tag-ulan.
Ang climate change, ito yung pagbabago ng panahon. For example po, dapat this month it's tag-init, nagiging tag-ulan po siya dahil sa mga human actions po.
What is climate change?
Actually, climate change is, these are recorded data that tells us that the climate is changing. So the simple explanation is that we are now experiencing different parameters, measurable parameters of the climate we haven't experienced before, because the recorded data, it's about 30 plus years. So that's why scientists can say that the climate is changing. So when we talk about it a little bit deeper, so that we will understand more what changes are happening in the climate. There are only three things that we are trying to measure. Number one, the temperature. Number two, the sea level rise. And number three, the precipitation. So these three measurable indicators has changed over the past 30 plus years. That's why we can tell that the climate has changed.
The United Nations defined climate change as the long-term shifts in temperatures and weather patterns which naturally influenced by the sun's activity or large volcanic eruptions. But since the 1800s, human activities have contributed a lot in climate change due to the burning of fossil fuels like coal and gas. When did the climate change started? The climate change can be traced back 1,000 years ago. Even before the coming of Jesus Christ, the climate change was already observed. The Epic of Gilgamesh in 2100 BCE from ancient Mesopotamia, the area today made up of Iraq, northeast Syria, and southeast Turkey. As the ruler of Uruk, King Gilgamesh was searching for immortality when he met boatman Utnapishtim. Utnapishtim warns the king to prepare for a terrible flood. Tear down thy house, build a ship, abandon wealth, seek after life, scorn possessions, save thy life. Bring up the seed of all kinds of living things into the ship which thou shalt build. This story became the basis of other religions and their belief system, where offense to the gods will result in the destruction of the environment. There are ancient empires like Akkadian Empire, Khmer Empire in Southeast Asia, and Roman Empire. These empires were known to be prosperous, having advanced civilization and improved economy. But because of climate change, they collapsed. During their time, they experienced extensive change of climate patterns, which increased droughts, causing the abandonment and desertion of the empires. Also, the Mayan civilization, now comprised by southern Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, Honduras, and El Salvador, was also affected by climate change. Their lands were abandoned due to an extensive period of drought that destroyed crops and water supplies became scarce in the region. In the other parts of the world, in Greenland, the 5,000 Viking settlers lived in that area for 500 years. Then the Little Ice Age in the 15th century disrupted their lives, which resulted in the lesser farming production, including the difficulty of raising of livestock. Attempting to use the sea for the source of their food failed, which later on made them abandon their colony. Climate change has affected the extinction of past civilizations in the world. It is a natural part of the environment that cannot be avoided. In the past 10,000 years, the Earth experienced stable climate conditions that led to the development of modern civilizations. The present issue is the contribution of human activities to climate change. When the steam engine was invented in 1760, it also started the emission of gases into the atmosphere. The Industrial Revolution, where steam engines in automobiles production and use increased the carbon gases that caused the Earth to increase its temperature. Joseph Fourier, a French physicist, was the first to use the greenhouse effect in 1824 to describe the Earth. For the first time in 1927, carbon emissions because of burning of fossil fuel had reached to 1 billion tons per year worldwide. By 2006, it had increased to 8 billion per year. If the Earth will continue to increase its temperature, more extreme weather conditions will be observed, like typhoons, heavy rains, heat waves, prolonged droughts, increase of sea levels that will affect the agriculture, food security, and the displacement of populations. What are the three main causes of climate change? Number 1, greenhouse effect. Number 2, reflectivity or absorption of the sun's energy. And number 3, natural process like solar variation, volcanic eruptions, axial tilt, precession, eccentricity. The last two causes do not make a great impact to the climate change compared to the greenhouse effect. And so, we will focus on the greenhouse effect. What are greenhouse gases? They are gases in the Earth's atmosphere which create a blanket that traps heat. While they allow sunlight to pass through them, they prevent the heat that the sunlight brings from leaving the atmosphere. Similar to how a greenhouse works. Ultimately, this is what causes global temperatures to rise, increased by over 1.1 degrees, resulting in more disasters like flash floods and wildfires. Carbon dioxide is among the most harmful greenhouse gases on Earth, along with nitrous oxide, methane, and gas. Greenhouse gases are primarily emitted through burning fossil fuels like coal and natural gas for electricity, heat, and transportation. While some gases are more effective than others at making the planet warmer, they all remain in the atmosphere for years, some for thousands. Global warming is also the cause of the melting of glaciers in Alaska, Greenland, and Antarctica that keeps on increasing the sea level. The BBC News reported that 270 billion tons of ice were lost in a single year, which is equal to the water consumption of the entire global population in 30 years. The rising in sea level is also the decrease of coastlands and some islands now erased on the world map. There is a projection that in the 21st century, in unprotected coastland, there will be a land loss of 60,000 to 415,000 square kilometers. That will result to the migration of 17 to 21 million population. How our lifestyle contributes to climate change.
And every bit of electricity that is being wasted is an emission. So, isa yon. Another one is when we choose to live extravagantly, kahit naman, for example, paano ba yung extravagant living? For example, food wastes. No? Hindi natin inuubos yung mga pagkain natin. This, again, causes a lot of emissions. Marami tayong damit na hindi naman natin ginagamit. Again, contributes to a lot of emissions. Remember that everything that you can buy, everything that you can eat, that you can use, it has somewhat been processed before nahawakan nyo. So, yung mga prosesong ito causes a lot of emissions in the environment. No? Another one is when we travel. So, if you have like a car, kung mag-isa ka lang naman, magta-travel, ang lapit lang, papaandar pang sasakyan, mga ganon. This causes, again, a lot of emissions.
What are the effects of climate change to the environment? The National Aeronautics and Space Administration listed 9 effects of climate change to the environment. These are U.S. sea level likely to rise from 1 to 6.6 feet by 2100. Climate changes will continue through this century and beyond. Hurricanes will become stronger and more intense. More droughts and heat waves. Longer wildfire season. Changes in precipitation patterns. Frost-free season and growing season will lengthen. Global temperatures will continue to rise. Arctic is very likely to become ice-free. Impacts of climate change in the Philippines. These are Philippines to lose 6% gross domestic product annually by 2100. Major rainfall changes in patterns and distributions. Threats to natural ecosystems, such as coral loss, declining rice yields, more intense droughts, higher sea level rise, water scarcity. Labor productivity declined. Because of the heat experienced in workplaces, there will be decline in working hours. More public health emergencies. Diseases like dengue, typhoid, malaria, and cholera increase in high temperatures. More women endangered and killed. According to UN Foundation, women experience health risks from the effects of climate change and barriers to living areas prone to climate change because of their caregiving roles, lack of financial assets, rights to land and property. What will happen if we do not mitigate the effects of climate change?
There are two scenarios that we are dealing with right now because we are trying to deal with this problem in the climate. And then we are looking at it. There are two scenarios. There are, ang tawag natin, we call these scenarios the RCP 4.5 and the RCP 8 scenarios. So yung RCP 8, RCP stands for the RCP is the concentrated pathway. Okay, it's the relative concentration pathway, if I still remember it correctly. So, yung isa, yung 8, mataas na value dahil this is telling us about the business as usual. We will not change anything about what we do. So, business as usual. Kung kailangan natin magmina pa rin, no? When we need to burn, still, we burn fossil fuels and whatsoever. This is RCP 8. Business as usual. If we don't do this, there is a fear that we will reach a change in temperature of more than 2 degrees Celsius. And imagine every 1 degree Celsius of change in temperature means about 90%, 80, ganun, mataas, 90% of our agricultural products ang affected. And we will have a loss of more than sa kaya nating mawala on our margins. That's RCP 8. Yung RCP 4.5 is yun yung ating gustong mangyari na nag-e-effort tayo. Marami tayong ginagawang effort, may mga senaryo tayo. And this one is what we are fighting for. Everybody is fighting for. Every sector is doing their best to do this. And we are targeting a raise or a change in temperature of not more than 1.5 degrees Celsius. So, sa RCP 4.5, yun ang ginagawa natin. So, madami tayong ginagawa, planting of trees, and many others na ginagawa natin for us to be able not to increase the temperature to unhabitable levels. So, yun yung dalawang scenario na mangyayari.
With all the effects and threats of climate change to the environment and to the safety of humanity, what can we do to mitigate or reduce the effects of climate change? The United Nations Development Program, or UNDP, suggested 6 actions to reduce greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. These are shifting away from fossil fuels, transitioning to modern renewable energy sources like solar, wind, and geothermal power, and advancing sustainable modes of transportation is crucial. Improving energy efficiency, using less energy overall. This can be achieved by using thermal comfort standards, better insulation and energy-efficient appliances, and by improving building design, energy and transmission systems, and vehicles. Changing agricultural practices. Regenerative agricultural practices, including enhancing soil health, reducing livestock-related emissions, direct seeding techniques, and using cover crops, support mitigation, improve resilience, and decrease the cost burden on farmers. The sustainable management and conservation of forests. Measures to reduce deforestation and forest degradation are key for climate mitigation and generate multiple additional benefits such as biodiversity conservation and improved water cycles. Restoring and conserving critical ecosystems. Ecosystems such as wetlands, peatlands, and grasslands, as well as coastal biomes such as mangrove forests, also contribute significantly to carbon sequestration, while supporting biodiversity and enhancing climate resilience. Creating a supportive environment. Investments, policies, and regulations that encourage emission reductions, such as incentives, carbon pricing, and limits on emissions from key sectors are crucial
to driving climate change mitigation. In 2015, 196 parties to the UN Climate Convention in Paris adopted the Paris Agreement, a landmark international treaty with a goal to decrease temperature below 2 degrees Celsius or 1.5 degrees Celsius. To limit global warming to the critical threshold of 1.5 degrees Celsius, it is imperative for the world to undertake significant mitigation action. Simple steps that individuals can do to mitigate climate change.
Sabi ko lagi sa mga anak ko, and even on my students, from the moment you wake up, there are a number of ways for you to reduce your emissions. Because when we talk about climate change, what we want to do actually at the end of the day is to reduce our emissions. Of course, simple ways are, do not overuse your energy. Electricity, water, and fuel, do not overuse them. If you have a chance to save your energy in the form of electricity, water, and fuel, do so. For example, iniwan natin naka-plug ang ating mga chargers. Iniwan natin nakasaksak ang aircon, ang TV, etc. This still consumes electricity. And every bit of electricity that is being wasted is an emission. So, isa yun. My mother is a retired professor here in the university. And she promotes the mantra of 1 plant a day. Like, anybody can do 1 plant a day. Hindi siya ganun kahirap, hindi rin siya ganun ka-tasking, Sabi niya nga noon sa akin, like, after you eat a mango, and then you put the seed on the soil and let the seed grow, that's 1 plant a day. And every plant that we plant, is our way to reduce carbon dioxide emission in the atmosphere. Because we all know, and by photosynthesis, we all know that these plants absorbs carbon dioxide. Diba? So, nakakabawas tayo. Yun, 1 plant a day. Ano pa ba mga simple natin? Kapag matutulog na tayo, diba, if it's cool, you lower your, or if kung mainit ang gabi, naka-aircon ka, lower the temperature down to 24 ba kami? 23, down to that. Huwag nang isagad ng 17, 16 because the lower the temperature na nandun, mas mataas ang energy consumption, mas mataas ang emissions natin. Use of cell phone. If you can limit, or maybe you can buy phones that will, they have this technology now that is really going big. Like, dati noon you have to charge for hours. Ngayon, like 15 minutes, you have a full charge. So, maybe update their phones. Because the longer you charge, of course, the more energy you're using. The quicker is it, then it's done, So, marami pang other activities. Actually, sabi ko nga, kung may, kaya mo mag-joke. Sabi ko nga noon, kung wala sasabihin maayos, wag na magsalita. Kasi, nagre-release ka pa ng carbon dioxide sa atmosphere, Wala ka naman sasabihin. Sa mga marites, gano'n. Mga gano'n, So, there's a lot of activities actually. And if we become more environmental and we think of ways, reduce our waste, conserve energy, diba? Be mindful of our carbon footprints. I think even an ordinary citizen, even yung mga bata, can do a lot to help us mitigate and adapt with the changing climate.
Understanding climate action.
To be looked at, people should also understand climate action. Climate actions is more about, we have to speak out to other countries, especially big countries, first world countries, who does a lot of emissions other than us. Itong China, US, Europe, these are the countries that produces more of these goods, of the items that third world countries or developing countries like us na binibili natin sa nila. But in a sense, they're the ones who are creating a lot of emissions compared to third world countries like us. But again, we all suffer the same because we're just under one atmosphere. So, yung ganon, So, we have really to call for climate justice. Right? How do we do that? What's the example of that? Tayo na yung naaapektuhan ng climate change. Tayo rin ang magbabayad para sa mga programs and projects natin. That's why we're also pushing, and I'm teaching my students how to do proposals that we can seek for grants from first world countries. Because they have to pay for what they're contributing to climate change, bigger or larger in scale compared to to developing countries like us. But we all of us suffer from this. So climate action as well.
The response of the Philippine government to climate change.
We have a climate change act in the Philippines. This act looks into the different policies that the different national government agencies and other local government agencies can use so that meron silang anchorage or meron silang policy na sasandalan. No? So there are two ways to do this. Meron tinatawag na climate change adaptation and the other one is climate change mitigation. So si climate change adaptation sa ating Climate Change Act ay marami nang ginagawa ang gobyerno natin other than joining our United Nations
Sustainable
yes,
Development
SDGs. So other than that, dito sa atin sa local, ang dami natin ginagawa Ang government natin ngayon, they are doing this climate change expenditure tagging. So other than encouraging government agencies to do adaptive measures for climate change and mitigative measures, they also want to tag how much of the budget or the percentage of the government allocations are used for these projects. So, madami tayong climate change adaptation activities at madami din tayong climate change mitigation activities na ginagawa. Other than, of course, the tree planting na kinakasanayan natin. So, isa yun. No? Isang example niyan, for our climate change mitigation activities na pinopromote ng ating gobyerno is yung sa Department of Energy kung saan tinitingnan nila kung gaano ka-efficient ang ating energy mechanisms sa mga government establishments or government agencies. Recently kami dito sa CBSUA, we've been audited twice. 2 years already, we have been audited for the government energy management plan or energy efficiency. Tinitingnan nila doon. So, because of these mechanisms, tinitingnan nila kung ano ang ginagawa nyo in order for you to have a good energy saving mechanisms. That, of course, when you save energy or if you use it efficiently, you reduce the emissions of greenhouse gases. So, isa yon na mekanismo ng gobyerno na ginagawa sa atin. Maliban doon, sa local natin, may mga ordinansya tayo. Say, for example, ang barangay, they have this ordinance of no burning ng mga winalis. No burning of basura. And then, of course, solid waste management, pagkuha ng basura ng segregated na tama. So, marami pang other activities ang government na inilunsad para meron tayong backbone na susundan.
The sustainable actions of Central Bicol State University of Agriculture in response to climate change.
We have our policies and guidelines in place. We are monitoring our emissions. We are monitoring the waste management. We're looking into other practices. Although these are small, no? Pag tinignan mo sa university, like for example, we are using papers. We are using the paper. So, parang napakadaling gawin ng kahit sino na pag meron siyang papel, they can reuse the clean side. But this actually gives us a leeway or gives us a very easy way for us to adapt and to mitigate that. Because, of course, the production of paper means a lot of emissions. No? From cutting of the trees down to the production of the paper, hanggang makarating yan sa iyo, sobrang daming carbon footprint yan. So, if we can double the usage, the utility of the paper, so instead na one side na gagamitin mo, reuse namin lahat ng paper. So, in some ways, we can save our resources and at the same time, we contribute into mitigating the climate change. No? So, we also have this policy on vehicles. So there's no idling of vehicles. We promote carpooling. These are all mechanisms to reduce carbon footprints of every individual in the university. Other than that, we have the common policies. Say for example, you cannot use the aircon sobra-sobra sa oras. Usually we start it at 9 a.m. And then lights are all LEDs. Our air conditioning units are inverter types. majority of the constructions of the buildings are yung mga bago namin na buildings are responsive already. So, yung mapapansin mo yung mga bago kaming building dito na utilizing daylight efficiency. So, salamin na siya. May mga malalaking windows at salamin. And then, other than that, we are also proud that we are offering the Bachelor's of Science and Environmental Science curriculum across all our 4 campuses. Dati dito lang yan sa main, but because of our call for the environment, we have offered the Bachelor of Science in Environmental Science across 4 campuses. So meron kami sa Sipopot, sa Pasacao, at sa Calabanga campus. So in-offer namin ang BS Environmental Science. And we are also offering, we have pioneered the offering of the Masters of Science in Disaster Risk Reduction Management. And right now, we have transitioned into the Masters in Disaster Risk Management professional track, where we also discuss climate change adaptations and mitigation principles, strategies, and many others sa aming sa aming graduate students. So, and recently, nadagdag ko na rin, wala sa mga accolades natin dito, but recently we have partnered with DENR EMB on many of our environmental management, and we have been chosen one of the 2025 awardee for the most sustainable universities. This is the 2025 Saringaya Awards. So, yun mga ginagawa namin sa CBSUA na, of course, we are very proud of that we can do this with the help and support of our very able and dynamic administration, headed by President Dr. Alberto Namberi.
The assistance of Central Bicol State University of Agriculture to the agricultural sector.
We also involve farmers, cooperatives, into disaster management, because as part of climate change, it exacerbates natural hazards. Right now, di ba, may natural hazards tayo, no? Parang yung bagyong Tino nasa baba ng Kamsur, but we are still experiencing the heavy rains. So, with this, we also help our farmers, our cooperatives to understand these concepts of disaster management and how can they adapt to it and how can they work around it, so that they will have minimal or no loss at all, if possible. So we're doing that. Of course, farmers can come here and then they can work with our Extension Services Division and then or Resilience Center, and then we will look for the experts that they can help, that the experts can help.
Call to action for all individuals.
To everybody else that is watching, every action that we do matters when we talk about climate change. No? It's not about big companies doing something or groups of people doing tree planting. Every action that we do, even as an individual, helps in our advocacy to adapt to climate change and to mitigate climate change. And if I may say, also advocate for climate action. Speak up. We have a lot of platforms right now. We have social media platforms. There's a lot, of course, and join the climate action. Be proactive. Do not wait for disasters to happen to you. Learn about disaster management, disaster risk reduction management. Learn about climate change adaptation and climate change mitigation.
The world is in danger. You and I is in danger if the effects of climate change will continue to worsen. Victims of typhoons, flash floods, wildfires, droughts, and the rising of sea levels are increasing around the world. You and I have a big responsibility in mitigating the effects of climate change. Simple practices in saving the energy, such as living a simple lifestyle, of not wasting food, of not buying unnecessary things, of not going to the trend of consumerism can help a lot. Because every time we buy, it undergoes a process which includes the emission of gases in the atmosphere. The countries around the world must work together to achieve the Sustainable Development Goal number 13 to combat the climate change and its impacts. Governments, especially in the first world countries, must work out to decrease the temperature to less than 2 degrees Celsius in the atmosphere. Human activities have caused the climate change, but also human responses can be the keys to mitigate the effects of climate change in the world. Because this planet Earth is still worth saving for this generation and the coming generation.